This story happened slightly over 20 years ago, back when I was 16. During this time I lived with my mom and stepdad in a remote area 70 miles west of Las Vegas, Nevada. I had gone out to visit with my friends, being allowed to drive myself for the first time ever. Had a lovely time watching a movie and getting food together until it was time for me to head home. The curfew I was given was 10 p.m. with the caveat that if I was running late for any reason, to find a pay phone and call. The night wrapped around me in my old 71 Chevy pickup, as there were no streetlights or houses for most of my way home. As I pulled up to the first of two stop signs, I could see an older sedan. Old cars are still pretty common in that area. Stopped with its hazards on. I pulled up behind it and waited as a man 30 to 40 years old started walking towards me from the driver's side. Even at this point, I didn't have any alarm bells going off. Being in the middle of the Mojave Desert, providing assistance to stranded people was common. People rapidly get into severe problems there by not having enough water when a vehicle breaks down, or not realizing that it's a damn desert. And people die wandering deliriously away from the highway trying to find help. Anyhow, I rolled down my window, and as he came abreast of my door, I could smell the liquor on him. I could see another man in the passenger seat, as this was before anyone I knew had cell phones, and the nearest payphone was a good 10 minutes drive ahead. I didn't have a way to call the cops on a drunk driver immediately. The man explained that his car stalled and asked if I could help them out. I asked if his car was a stick shift, which it was, so I asked if he was familiar with push starting it. He said yes, so I agreed to as gently as I could push their car with my truck while they turned the engine over. For anyone that isn't familiar, this is a way to start a manual car that is having battery or starter issues, specifically to get it somewhere to work on it. I knew my truck would be fine, and I didn't feel like it would be wise to get out and try to push their car physically. Push starting the car worked without a hitch, but here's where things go south. They get back out and thank me, then invite me to hang out and have some fun with them. I decline. They pull off to the side of the road and I continue on my way, only they start following me. So here I am, it's 9:50 p.m. I'm running late because I stopped to help them. Admittedly, I hadn't given myself much leeway from leaving my friends. These drunk, creepy older guys have started to follow me on a road without any man-made light except for car headlights, and I'm at least 10 minutes from a payphone. I think to myself, maybe I'm being paranoid, so I turn down a road that I know gave me a couple turnoffs to either head back to town or loop around to the gas station with a payphone. The car follows behind me. I'm thinking I'm in trouble. I take another turn that only leads to a couple houses at the end of the road, and they turn behind me. I take another turn to loop around back to that station, and they follow again, so at least I know they are following me and not just heading home. At this point, my heart is pounding. I decided to try something to lose them. I pull to the side of the road. I see them pull up behind me. I wait as the driver gets out of the car and begins walking towards me. His companion also gets out and starts walking towards me as well. I wait until they almost get to my tailgate, then floor it. My wheels dig into the rocks and poof dirt, causing a cloud behind me. With the leadway, I head towards the gas station. The gas station is deserted, but the payphone is showered in the light from the gas pumps. I call home and explain what happened and why I was running late. My stepdad asked if the gas station worker could be seen, and I let him know I couldn't see him behind the counter. He was probably in the back. I wasn't in trouble, but I was asked to hurry home. So, to the two drunk idiots that wanted to screw 16-year-old me on my first night driving by myself, let's not meet again. Sorry for the length. In 2011, I was apartment hunting and found this one place that seemed perfect. There was a main house. Behind it was a guest house that had been recently renovated into a duplex. The ground floor of the guest house had been converted into a large covered garage that could fit 3 cars plus a ton of storage items. It was really musty, had a terrifying spider population, and lacked working lights. A flight of wobbly wooden steps led up to a second floor deck where 2 side-by-side entrance doors for the separate apartments were. When I first moved in, the guest house had just finished renovations, and the rental agency hadn't found anyone for the other apartment yet. I enjoyed the peace and quiet, which was perfect for studying. A few months after school started in the fall, a new girl moved in. She introduced herself as Angela and said she went to the same school as me. She was studying biology and was a freshman. She seemed nice and was pretty quiet at first. However, of course, cue nightmare. After the first month, I started hearing an annoying clopping noise emanating from her apartment. It sounded like she had cloven hooves. She had wood floors, and the sound echoed like crazy. It would suddenly start at 3 a.m., and it would wake my dogs, and they would start howling. Soon, I started hearing the most comical sex noises ever. It sounded like the cheesiest, loudest adult film in existence with never-ending fake orgasms. This went on every day, multiple times a day. At first, I thought, good for her. After the third day, though, I was tired of it. Bye-bye, perfect study environment. One day, when I was getting ready to step outside to grab the mail, I heard voices out on the deck talking. One male, one Angela. I peeked out through my peephole and saw an older guy, maybe 60 to 65 years old, with a fat belly, white hair, and a sweat-stained undershirt. This was maybe 10 minutes following one of the comical sex routines. I assumed she had a super old sugar daddy and waited until they left to grab my mail. A week later, I pulled into the back alley that led to the garage entrance and saw a car parked in front of the garage, blocking the entrance. I assumed Angela had a friend over who decided to park there. I knocked on her door and she answered in feathered lingerie and clear platform stripper shoes. A very sweaty and out-of-breath older guy said he would move the car. By this point, I had realized that Angela was a prostitute. I excitedly texted my friends the news, and we laughed about it. The next night, it was really dark out. I had gone to the grocery store and pulled into the back alley. The floodlight was out, and it was unnervingly dark. I always hate pulling into the garage because it's insanely creepy, especially when it's this dark out. However, I opened up the door, slid my car in, and then got out to unload. A dark shadow stood at the garage entrance next to my trunk. Hello, I almost peed my pants. Though I liked my guest house, it wasn't in the best neighborhood, and I was convinced I was going to be mugged finally. Instead, the man made small talk, asking me if I lived next door to Angela. Was I a student? How did I like the area? Did I have a boyfriend? Stuff like that. He told me I was very beautiful and that he'd always wanted an Asian girlfriend. I walked closer to him and saw it was the man from the other week with the white hair and sweat-stained shirt. I was really evasive and asked him if he needed any help. When he said he just wanted to get to know me, I said no thanks. He told me he would pay me. I realized he probably thought I was a prostitute too, and I quickly told him to screw off. I rushed past him and went upstairs, leaving my groceries in the car and the garage door wide open. Shortly after, I started noticing that things were missing or moved in my apartment. Clothes would go missing. I'd hunt desperately for a pair of leggings, or a dress or a bra, and I would never be able to find them even after searching the laundry hamper. Stuff like mail or books would be moved from one room to another. My dogs and cat also started acting really skittish. Sometimes, I'd catch them staring intently up at a corner. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to hear really serious scratching noises coming from the living room. It sounded like a large animal with big claws was digging away at something. I mumbled, "Muffin, stop." I felt a paw on my arm and slowly opened my eyes. Muffin was on the bed with me, looking at me nervously. Okay, I sat up and looked around. My other dog and my cat were both sleeping soundly on my bed too. So what was in the living room making scratching noises? I also noticed that my bedroom door, which I had shut when I had gone to sleep, was now wide open. Nope, I've never been one to believe in the supernatural, but I was pretty convinced based on the signs that there was a ghost living in my apartment. Maybe this guest house used to be slave quarters. I put in headphones to drown out the noise and stayed up all night doing paranormal research on my laptop. I never once got out of bed to check out the living room. I was way too terrified. The next day, I crated my dogs and cats and went to school. When I got home, I noticed a wall next to the front door had some really deep scratches. The drywall and paint were ruined. These hadn't been there the previous day, and my pets were crated while I was gone, so I couldn't figure out where these had come from. Must be the ghost, I thought. The landlord had told me previously that there were paint cans in the garage, so I figured I would try to hide the ghost's mess with some paint. I went down into the garage, right in front of my parking spot inside the garage is this weird little workspace that someone had constructed before I moved in. I never looked inside, but it was maybe 6 by 4 and had walls made of particle board. I didn't see any cans of paint on the garage floor, so I figured this was a storage room for stuff like that. I opened the makeshift door to the workspace. First, I saw shelves with paint cans. Great. Then I looked down and saw a blanket, pillows, flashlight, giant plastic canister of cheese balls, a big screwdriver, and a Velcro wallet. There was also a set of weird pull-down stairs at the top of the workspace, attached to the garage ceiling like the kind you use with an attic. I picked up the wallet and looked inside. Damn, photo ID of that creepy sweat-stained shirt guy. I immediately fled the garage and went into my apartment to call the cops and report that a homeless guy had apparently moved into my garage. The cops came to investigate. First, they found that the pull-down stairs lead up to a door in the ceiling that resembled a ceiling tile. When you lifted and moved the ceiling tile aside, you were in my unused utility closet in my apartment. The cops asked if I ever noticed anything strange in my apartment, and I told them about the missing and moved stuff. Apparently, the screwdriver found in the workspace had flecks of paint and drywall on it. I don't know why someone would just sit in my living room and scratch at the wall with a screwdriver in the middle of the night, but I am so glad I never left my bedroom to look at the ghost now. The cops never found my missing clothes, though. The cops also never found or caught the guy. I tried to confront Angela about the weirdos she was bringing to our building, and how one had been living in the garage and breaking into my apartment, but she mysteriously disappeared. No more comical sex noises or clapping. Mail piled up in her box. Then randomly, a month later, a new guy was living there. Weirded out, I called the landlord, who said the new guy was a new tenant and wouldn't give me information on what happened to Angela. Creepy. This happened 25 years ago. I was 17 years old, 5 feet tall, and at the most 95 pounds soaking wet. On this day, I was driving a few friends home after spending all day at the lake. Because of this, I was wearing a bikini with some cut-off shorts. I was just about to drop off my last passenger who was in the back seat and head home. I had just come off the freeway and turned on the main road in town. As I pulled up to a red light, there was an ambulance in the lane to my left pulling up alongside me. Shortly after, the light turned green and we all moved forward. I heard the whoop of the siren. I checked my mirrors and then looked to my left and saw the ambulance driver had his window down and was yelling at me, telling me to pull over. I was confused as the siren had only been on for a small moment. I wondered if I'd somehow missed seeing their lights on, that maybe they needed me to pull over so they could pass for an emergency. I was even more surprised and confused when the ambulance pulled up right next to me and the driver got out and approached my door. He then asked me to step out of the vehicle to speak with him. I was confused, so I asked why I was being pulled over. He again asked me to step out of the car with my license and registration. I grabbed my license and registration out of the glove compartment and stepped out of the car and said, "I didn't think an ambulance could pull you over." My friend in the back seat took that moment to pipe up, saying, "This is bull." The driver's eyes grew wide and he leaned in the car window, telling my friend to shut up unless he'd like to be in a pair of cuffs. I again asked why he was pulling me over. This wasn't like any time I'd been pulled over in the past, and the looks the ambulance driver had been giving me until now were making me feel incredibly uncomfortable. I felt very exposed, so I brought my arms up to cover my chest. The hair on my arms were standing on end, and my gut was churning. The driver told me he pulled me over due to the fact that my car did not have a front license plate. He wouldn't have seen that until he had pulled up and gotten out of the vehicle, but I did have one in the front passenger side of the windshield, as I didn't have a place to attach a license plate in the front of my car. I tried to point out I had one in the windshield, but he kept saying how much trouble I was in and that he needed my driver's license and registration. He then kept talking over me and yelling at me for any of my questions. He sounded incredibly angry. He eventually made a big deal of telling me I was so lucky he was letting me off with a warning, and that I better not let it happen again. The whole thing was bizarre and left me feeling nervous and off balance. Looking back at everything, it felt like he was trying to keep me scared so I wouldn't question things. He didn't have a name tag on or show me a badge. He didn't have any official ticket paperwork. I didn't see a partner in the ambulance. I really feel he was counting on my youth and insecurity, fear to keep me compliant. I also think I was lucky to have a friend in the car to witness everything. I feel like that put a stop to whatever was in the driver's mind and made him angry. I remember going home so worried about everything, analyzing everything about the encounter, and freaking out that he had my personal information. I was already living on my own and not close to my family at that time, so I didn't feel I had anyone I could talk to about it. I calmed down a bit once I remembered that my ID and registration were not up to date. I had moved twice that year and hadn't updated anything yet. This was in the mid-90s, so no online databases like there are now. The whole thing freaked me out. Creepy ambulance driver, let's never meet again. I leave for work around 6 a.m. every morning. I live in a tiny town in Texas, so small we don't even have police. Nothing ever happens here until this morning. I left as I usually do, and the road I take out of town is a dirt road with no lighting. I usually don't see other vehicles, especially not behind me. This morning as I left, I noticed a car down the street with its running lights on, but I didn't think much of it until there was a vehicle behind me gaining on me with ridiculous speed for all of the potholes on this dirt road. Then I realized the driver was trying to pass me. I have a healthy dose of paranoia, so this situation already had me on edge, and something in me said don't let them get in front of you, so I didn't stop at a stop sign. The other driver proceeded to gun it around me anyway since I had reduced my speed, but since I never stopped they couldn't cut me off completely. They then stopped in the middle of the street. I found myself pulling around the suspicious driver on their right half off the road and rolling down my window to ask if everything was okay. And that's when I noticed that the person in question had put the vehicle in park. They were halfway out of the driver's side door by the time I got around the front side of their vehicle, and our eyes met. I felt a moment of terror, realizing that if I stayed put something bad would happen. I floored it and swerved around the front of the vehicle, crashing through numerous potholes to reach the highway. It was only a little ways off. He stayed on my bumper until I jumped into traffic, after which he stopped following, and I called the county sheriff. They sent somebody to patrol, but it's doubtful they'll find anyone. I drive a truck and the other driver was in an older Tahoe or some similar SUV. I'm so shaken up that I called into work. I read this sub all the time and have thought my life is so boring I'll never have a post to contribute, but here I am. I had to write it all out because the scenes keep playing over and over in my head. Watching those headlights accelerate toward me, the fear I felt when they tried to start passing me, run me off the road. It was the scariest moment of my life. When I looked into that man's eyes, like I could feel his intentions were to do me harm. Suddenly I'm thankful for a boring life. So whoever you were this morning, let's not ever meet.